So I do want to bring in now Elizabeth Wydra. She is president of the Constitutional Accountability Center. Elizabeth, thank you so much for making the time to join us this evening. Obviously, we've heard a lot so far. I want to get your initial takeaways.
Yeah, it's really a breathtaking hearing. You know, I think as you were just saying, in some ways it's hard to believe that it actually happened. And so watching that video footage, while terrible for many of us to relive, I think was so crucial for this hearing as the committee reminds the American people just what happened on that terrible day. And importantly, what is ongoing in terms of the attack on democracy. I thought it was really interesting that this was very clearly a sober, bipartisan moment for this committee, having Congresswoman Cheney present and lay out just in really stark detail the timeline of that day, and the words coming from Republicans themselves, members of Trump's inner circle, talking about how they knew they lost the election, they knew there was no fraud, they knew that there was no there, as the Republican testimony itself showed. And so this was really the final attempt to overthrow the vote of the people, this violent attack. And laying out what we're going to see in the coming hearings, I think was just a really telling testament to how much evidence this painstaking effort by the committee has turned up. They've looked it over at 140,000 documents, put out 100 subpoenas, done 1,000 interviews and depositions. And what we're seeing tonight is definitely proof of that, this painstaking effort. And, I think that the primetime hearing is going to break through to Americans who are understandably focused on, things other than, democratic accountability. But the fact is, they need to be focused on it for right now.
Elizabeth, I want to ask you about the oath that they were talking about. I think this is a big theme for tonight, is this oath to defend the Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic. What does that mean in relation to what we're seeing here, especially because we know that a number of the people who've been arrested as part of that parallel investigation by the Department of Justice, well, they are former military or former law enforcement or current military who have sworn that oath themselves and yet had a very different view of what enemies, foreign and domestic meant.
So look, I think that's incredibly important. And there are ways that we settle disputes in this constitutional democracy, and that's at the ballot box. And what we saw on January 6th and what we saw in the coordinated ongoing campaign around it was a refusal to abide by those results. But that's not American. I don't know what it is, but it's not American constitutional democracy. And the oath to defend the Constitution, if you think that you can disrupt the peaceful transfer of power that is outlined in the Constitution through violence, you are not upholding that oath to defend the Constitution. It's very clear. When you talk, and Chairman Thompson talked about our country's history and the way that oath changed, as you mentioned as well, to include enemies, both foreign and domestic. The Confederate flag did not get marched through the Capitol during the Civil War, but it did on January 6th. And the attack on American constitutional democracy was terrifying and terrible. And if there is not this serious effort to hold those involved, both in the Capitol that day and those who supported it and organized it and financed it, if there's not an effort to hold people truly accountable, then I really do fear for our constitutional democracy going forward.
It's such a great point, Elizabeth. It looks like the hearing is probably getting back underway. We may be hearing from our witnesses again shortly. I'm hoping you'll stick with us so we can continue to break this down when we have these types of breaks. But I do want to get one more quick take from you about what we might expect to hear from these witnesses. What do you think this is going to bring to the committee that we've not yet heard so far?
I think, again, it's just a very palpable invocation of what happened that day. We saw it with the video, and now we're going to hear it from the witnesses. Because what needs to happen tonight, and I think what is happening, is the committee needs to break through all of the daily concerns of Americans and also the disinformation that's been put out by those who seek to avoid accountability. And so I think our witnesses along with what we heard in the opening statements in that video, are just going to really demonstrate the horror of that day and the ongoing threat to our democracy.
Such a good point. Like I said, it looks like we will be getting back underway here shortly. Just to